I waited for hours that felt like years. I had no clock to measure time. Eventually, I heard the sound of an approaching engine. It rumbled up the driveway. I heard the garage door open. Eddie was home. I remembered him saying he got off at 6. I figured it was early evening. I sat on the bed, awaiting the inevitable. But Eddie didn't come up to my room right away. I heard him walking around downstairs for a while, and the sound of things being dragged across the floor. The sound of heavy furniture being moved. What was he doing? I figured he was getting his living room ready for the prom. Eventually, I heard him come upstairs. I could hear that he was panting with exertion. He went into the bathroom. I could tell because it was the only room upstairs not locked, and he didn't pause to dig out his keys. And I heard the shower come on. Probably about 20 minutes later, it shut off, and I heard Eddie exit the bathroom and go to his door. I heard him unlock the padlock and enter, closing it behind him. I hoped to God he didn't notice anything had been disturbed. If I overlooked something when I'd been in there earlier. I'm guessing another half hour passed, and then his door reopened, and with dread, I heard the sound I had been waiting for. His footsteps approaching my room. I tensed, my heart jumping wildly in my chest, not knowing what to expect. His key turned in the lock, and then the door opened. He stood there, smiling at me. He was dressed in a cheap-looking tuxedo with a red flower in the lapel. His hair had been slicked back straight. It gleamed. I could faintly detect the smell of hair gel. He was holding something wrapped up in a dry cleaner's plastic storage bag. A dress. A prom dress. "Well, hurry up and get ready," he said good-naturedly in greeting. "The prom starts in less than an hour." He held the dress out to me. I took it from him. He pointed to the bathroom. "You can take a shower first if you want." "Maybe I better," I agreed. I did really need a shower. I hadn't bathed in almost 2 days and had been wearing the same clothes since yesterday. "Just don't take too long." "Don't worry, I won't," I told him, flashing a smile as I walked past him. I entered the bathroom. It was still steamy from Eddie's own shower. There was a paper shopping bag sitting next to the sink with Emily written on it. I opened it. It contained some brand new cosmetics. Eddie must have picked them up for me on his way home from work. I hung the prom dress on a hook in the bathroom door. And then I undressed, showered, patted myself dry with a towel, wiped the mirror clear of steam, and carefully applied the makeup. Then I opened the plastic bag holding the dress. It was sky blue and sequined. I was not surprised at all to see it was an exact copy of the dress I had worn to the prom in the final episode of Till Death Do Us Part. I briefly wondered where he had gotten it. I put on the dress and regarded myself in the mirror. I had to admit, I did look pretty good in it in my makeup. I looked 10 years younger. Although, you still wouldn't have mistaken me for the 22-year-old woman playing a 17-year-old girl I had once been. I braced myself for whatever was coming next, and then opened the bathroom door and stepped into the hallway. Eddie stared at me with a wide-eyed, comical look of awe on his face. He was speechless for a moment, and then found his voice. "You look amazing," he told me in a tone of utter reverence. I smiled. "You don't look half bad yourself," I replied. In a way, it wasn't a lie. In his tux with his combed back hair, Francis Voight, a.k.a. Eddie Caldwell, looked as close to handsome as he probably ever had or would. "Well, we better get moving," he said, gently taking my arm in his own. "The prom starts at 8. Just be sure you get me back home by 11 or my dad will kill you," I told him jokingly. Truthfully, I don't even know if I was just acting along at that point. Some part of my mind was starting to become absorbed in his madness, starting to accept it as reality. I believe they call that kind of thing Stockholm Syndrome, but... Well, he guided me down the hall and we went downstairs. I looked around. I felt like I was hallucinating. It was by far the most surreal thing yet. Eddie had shoved all of the furniture back against the walls, clearing the center of the room to make a dance floor. A dance floor populated with mannequins. Dozens of mannequins. Men and women, all dressed in formal wear, paired together as couples, made to look like they were dancing. I didn't know where he had gotten them all or where he'd been keeping them, but they were here now. The lights were off. Blue filtered spotlights had been rigged against the walls, casting a murky blue illumination over the dance floor. Music was playing through stereo speakers like the ones in his dining room he had set up in the corners of the living room. Eddie didn't seem to notice any of this. He led me through the living room and kitchen, down the hallway, into the garage, where he unlocked the door and we once again got into his car, sitting there for 20 minutes while he pretended to drive. Then he brought me back into the house and we re-entered his living room, which had been transformed into the gymnasium a few gate high on the night of senior prom, as if we had just arrived. The song playing from the stereo system was Heaven or Las Vegas. It had been used in the show. All of the music that played from the stereo that night was music that had been used in Till Death Do Us Part. He led me to a clear spot on the dance floor, and he looked at me. Would you care to dance? I would be happy to dance with you, Eddie. I allowed him to put one hand around my waist and guide me with the other. We slowly twirled around together on his living room floor, surrounded by mannequins, in a world of his own making. He smiled at me tenderly. In his eyes was the look of a man who knows he has finally reached the pinnacle of his whole existence. You look so beautiful, Emily. Thank you, Eddie. It means a lot to me. It really does. I'm so glad you chose to go with me tonight instead of with Chad. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. It feels like I've been waiting my whole life for this. I'm happier right now than I've ever been before. That's the truth. I didn't know what to say to that. I suddenly felt like I was going to start crying. It feels like I've been waiting my whole life for this. Heaven or Las Vegas changed into Vapor Trail by Ride. First you look so strong, and then you fade away. There was something I wanted to say to him. It was dangerous. I didn't know how he'd react by saying it. I might have inadvertently provoked his Ted half to come forward. But I knew I had to say it all the same. I felt compelled to. Eddie? Yes, Emily? I hesitated, and then forced the words out. Last night I heard you arguing with your brother Ted. In the dim blue light, I thought I could detect his face turning red. Not with anger, but with embarrassment. He lowered his eyes to the floor. Oh, he said quietly. That. Ted doesn't like me very much, does he? He's jealous. Of me? No, of me. He always has been, my whole life. I came along when he was 11, and I think he felt that our parents stopped loving him and gave it all to me. That they liked me more than him. Oh, I said understandingly. I was beginning to see the full picture, the blanks the newspaper articles hadn't filled in, Eddie's tragic journey through life. Vapor Trail had given way to When the Sun Hits by Slow Drive. Eddie looked up with a strange expression. His eyes were looking past me into space and time. When he spoke, his voice was different, not the high, happy-go-lucky tone I had become accustomed to. It was the quivery, soft voice of a hurt young boy. And then they died in a car accident when I was 7. Ted had just started college, and we didn't have any other family. He had to drop out and come back home to take care of me, get a job in a warehouse to support me. He always resented me for that. He always told me I ruined his life. I'm sorry, Eddie, I told him sincerely. He found out I had a crush on you, and it made him really angry. He started doing bad things to girls that reminded him of you. I felt a sudden chill. I found out what he was doing to those girls, and he made me go with him when he did the bad things. He made me watch. He said he'd kill me if I tried to stop him or went to the police. When I was 12, he got caught doing those bad things, and the police took him away. He was in jail for a long time. I had to go to foster care. My foster family, they weren't nice to me either. I kind of went crazy when I was 13. They had to put me in a psychiatric hospital. They let me out when I was 19. Said I was rehabilitated. Came back home. Got a job working at the mall. And then when I was 21, Ted got out of jail. He came back home to live with me. But he was still angry at me. He blamed me for having him go to jail. I think he hates me. And he hates you because he knows I love you. You won't let him hurt me, will you, Eddie? No. I'll kill him if he tries. I swear I will. I'll protect you from him, Emily. I couldn't find any words to say. My mind felt like it was going in 10 different directions at once. Eddie's brother had died in prison almost 13 years before, but he thought he had come back home instead. Perhaps it was guilt. As monstrous as Ted Voigt had been, as badly as he had treated Eddie, Francis, he had still been the only family he had left. Perhaps Eddie blamed himself for testifying against his own brother in court, condemning him to a death sentence. His already fragile psyche had collapsed. Part of his mind had refused to accept his brother was dead, and part of his mind had chosen to believe he was still alive. Part of his mind had made Ted still be alive, as a coping mechanism for Eddie. When the Sun Hits ended, a new song began, Leech by Alice in Halo. Eddie looked up, his face brightening. I always liked this song, he whispered. I looked up at him, feeling tears run down my cheeks. I reached up and gently clasped his face in both of my hands. He looked down at me. I leaned up and kissed him, softly and passionately, on the lips. He wrapped his arms tightly around my waist. For a brief instant, both of us existed in that strange world he had created. I whispered in his ear, I choose you, Eddie. I don't care about Chad. I love you. I love you, Eddie.